In this project, we're going to be working on a signpost, and we're going to be building this, which is basically a PS3 level project now. So we're going to add in a few more programs, and we're going to try and make this as realistic as possible. With this particular one, we're going to aim to try and make the exact same design. Usually what happens in game companies is that they'll give you a design, like a piece of paper that the concept artist draws, and your objective is to copy it exactly and recreate what they give you. You don't often get the choice to design what you want for 3D objects. So for this one project, we'll be trying to make it as accurate as possible. For all the other projects, you can build whatever you want, but this one is to make it as accurate and realistic as you can possibly make it. So for this this object right here, if you turn F4 off and on, you can see the lines on there. So this object is about 958 polygons, I think. So it's game resolution, but it looks really high quality. If we go click on this guy and move him over, I can go to my layers and take a look at the layers and take a look at the high res. So this high res object was built with 500,000 polygons, and right here, if you press 7 on the keyboard, it'll turn off your statistics mode, but it doesn't list how many polygons are the actual object. So if you're interested in knowing how many polygons are in an object, over here where the hammer is, you click on the hammer, and usually you don't see it here. I added it to the list, but if you don't see it, you would go to the more and pull out the polygon counter, but I added it to my sidebar. So if you click on Polygon Counter, then it'll list the currently selected object. So as you can see here, if I click it, it's 958 polygons. This one right here, if I click everything, this is over 500,000 polygons sitting in one object. This is way too much to put into a game. It's going to crash your game. But as you can see, actually it's so dense you can't even see the object because there's just so many polygons on the screen. But F4 to turn off the lines, and you can see that it looks really realistic. If I go over to the texture editor or material editor, I can turn off the color, and what happens when I turn off the color is that you'll see the difference. So right here you can see that the two signposts look almost identical, except that this one is 500,000 polygons and this one is less than 1,000. So what we're going to be doing is creating a low resolution game object that can mimic and look exactly like the high resolution right out of ZBrush, but won't crash your game. And this is called normal mapping. It'll be a way that creates detail with still being low polygon. If I turn off the normal map right here, you can see that it's only 1,000 polygons. It's very low resolution. You really don't see any of the detail that's on here, but we're going to project the high res onto the low res in a later step. So if I turn this bump map back on, you can really see that it has a lot of high resolution detail, and it looks like it's all sculpted on the surface, but it really isn't there. But the way the lights and the shadows work with it, you can really tell that it's bumped off the surface, but in essence it's really just a smooth object. And then the diffuse map is our color, which puts all the color in here. So we're going to try and copy the color and the shape and the bumps and everything else the same way to create the same looking object. And we'll also be, I'll have the midterm files available on the network drive, and so here it'll show you pictures so you can see the signpost. So as long as you have your sign under 1,000, then here's the ZBrush and here's the colored. And so it gives you multiple views so you can see what you're aiming for. We're going to try and orient everything, the rocks and the stones and the sign and the post, and put it all in the same position. In this picture we can see that it has a 3/4 down angle, a front, a side, a back, another side, and a top view, so you can help alignment to get everything in the right position. And then with this one we can see the nice ZBrush resolution. We can see the low poly base mesh that we're going to put into or build on 3ds Max, then high res it in ZBrush, and then bring it back and texture it and put a ambient occlusion map on there. So here we have the resolution, or the polygons, the base shape. So we're going to be using this image to create relatively the same base shape. If you don't have the same number of lines and whatever segments, it doesn't really matter, but it helps keep the object in the right shape when you put it into ZBrush. And we're going to sculpt this out of the base shape here and then color it. Also provided, we'll have the texture maps, but there's not really much you can do with it. It's just a way to help you understand where the UVs are going to be laid out. You can lay them out however you want. However you unwrap these things, there's no way that you're going to have the same orientation with the exact same vertice counts and matches. So there's nothing much you can really do with the map, but I'll provide it for you anyway as reference. This was made at 2048, so it's really high resolution, very large file size, or physical size of this map. So you get really nice photographic resolution. So if I click actual size, you can see that it comes out really nice and clear. So you can really see all the details. So that's what really makes it stand out. This one is our normal map. We'll learn how to do that when we bake our maps later. So we have the 3 map reference, and then we have these so you can get all different angles and try and recreate the same position. So all these files we provided, and also the we'll have the texture folder, so you can get the exact same textures that we have here. The bare wood, the bark, and the stones and rocks, and the other wood stuff. So we're going to be using all those also. And so let's get started with our project. So let's close out this stuff, and let's start a new project. Save changes, nope. New log. All right. So here we have a blank screen like we always start out with. And we're going to go back to create, and we're going to start with, let's say, a cylinder. So we create a cylinder, and actually, before we do that, instead of switching back and forth to constantly try and find pictures, we can actually just bring a picture into the program and use that as a reference template. So instead of flipping screens back and forth, there's always one in there. So to do that, if you draw a plane, by default the plane is going to drop on the flat ground. But it'd be easier instead of rotating up if we just draw it on this background. So if I switch out with the minimize button, which is down here, minimize and maximize, I'm going to click and draw it on the front viewport. So now I can drop the image right in here, and it'll always be in the screen, and I can always see what I'm looking at. So this is unnecessary if you're building it, but if you want an actual template to help you while building, then this would be also helpful. I don't really need any segments on here, so I'm going to take out, you can see there's 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3. Actually there's 4 is counting the polygons. So if I turn those to 1, you don't have those lines on there, which will help you so you don't have lines going across your image. And right here, the length and the width, we're going to match that to the drawing size. So if I pull up, let's say this one, we're going to do signpost 2, and signpost 2 has the polygons that we're going to try and match. So we're going to take this, and this one says it has a resolution of 1247 by 763. So we're going to reverse that, 763 by 1247. And if we check that again, yep, 1247, 763. So what it did here is it put an image plane in here with the exact same proportion as the photograph. So now there won't be any stretching or distortion. So if I click on this, just like you would normally add a texture map, we go to Material Editor. And these are still loaded because the sign file is already open. But I'll pick a blank one right here. And you can either pull out the maps or go to the diffuse right here, which has none. So I'll do this for shortcut's sake. Click on this, and bitmap, which means which file do you want. And then find out where that was. It should be in the desktop midterm project, midterm files, and this one. So we grab this one and go back up to the parent menu, and we're going to drag this onto our plane. But it won't appear because we haven't actually turned it on. So it's just dragging the texture on there. Remember, the on button is right there. Also, it's a little bit blurry. So if you want to put it in a high resolution mode so it's a lot clearer, you can click and hold the material, the on button, and pick the blue one, which is high resolution. And so now you can see the lines got a lot more clearer on us. So now we can close this up and zoom out. So you can see that the plane that we put on here now has an image attached to it. So just like a texture map, except that in this case, we can use this and build with this in the background without having to constantly switch screens. Unless you have a dual screen monitor, then just throw this image on your other monitor and you're fine. So this is a lot larger than we need though, so I'm going to go to scale. And you can see the grid size here. Well, I don't need this giant image on here, so I'm going to grab the middle, not the side pieces, but the middle, and scale it down a little smaller so it fits within my grid area. And I'm going to go to the move command, and kind of move it off to the side. This way I can still see the image as I'm building my signpost, and I can reference where all the points are. So again, you don't need to add this picture in here, but if it's helpful as a template to reference your image, then you can easily add images in here. So let's start with the cylinder now. So let's pick on cylinder, and I'm going to click and then drag upwards. So it looks about good enough. If you press F4, you can see the lines on here. So I'm going to leave the lines on so I can start to match these lines. What happens is we want to try and get everything to be square shaped for the most part, segments. And what this is going to do is if you have enough segments on here, it won't turn into a circle when you put the Turbosmooth, or what ZBrush will do is smooth it also. So you won't get circles. It holds and retains a little bit of the same shape. So generally when you're going to send something to ZBrush, try and keep them all squares and you get less distortion. So you can see here's a lot longer rectangles. So we don't need, or it'd be better if they're squares. So I can keep adding height segments right here, and the height we can see is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those, and there's 5 here. So the more I add, the more I'll get. And so we could try maybe 20 if it happens, but I really don't need this many going around the other direction. So I'm going to take the the side segments down to, let's say, 10. So now you can see it's kind of squared it out. So we got 10 and 20, let's say. But whatever number fits best with your computer or what size you draw it at, it might have different ratio numbers. And cap segments is referring to the top right here. Right now it has none, but in the drawing you can see that there's 1, 2 segments on there. So I'm going to click cap segments to 2. So it again helps it keep a little more square shape to it. Alright, and that we'll call this done for now and start building the other shapes, and then we'll come back to this with an edit poly. So I'm going to grab a box now. I'm going to take this box and draw it right about here and pull it up. And you can see we're trying to mimic the exact same position of all the pieces. So we can copy what it looks like. And for this I'm going to change to, let's say, 3 by 5 by 3. And so it looks pretty similar. If you wanted to count them, you could, but you don't have to be super accurate. What this is going to do, let's do an example. I'll make another box, draw this box. Actually, it already has the segments on there, so we'll cancel those back to 0. Oops. So if you do that, and we'll do one more. I can actually just copy this one for easier. If you hold Shift and use the Move command to drag, it'll create a copy for you. And that was holding Shift with the Move. Alright, so let's go with a Turbosmooth. So I grab this one, go to Modifier List, and add on the Turbosmooth right down here. And Turbosmooth will basically round everything for us. But whereas if I Turbosmooth this one, you can see it turns into a circle. So because this one had no segments on it, like this one, it doesn't have any segments, it just kind of circled. But if you have some segments like it did over here, you can see that it rounds the edges a little bit, but it still generally holds a rectangular brick stone kind of shape for us. So that's what adding those segments did. Also of note, if you were to put on, let's say, if we put this one in Edit Poly mode, so now we can make adjustments, and with Edit Poly, and this is just for demo purposes, you don't need to do this, we'll add a swift loop, and you can see if we put a loop right here on the edge, actually, let's put it on this one. So I'll go back to this one, we'll remove the Turbosmooth, delete, and then go back to Edit Poly, and then add on Swift Loop. So usually what we're going to do is put edge loops on things we want to keep sharp edges. So if I put one here and here, for example's sake, and then turn that off and put the Turbosmooth back on, what you'll see is that it left a really sharp edge. We don't really need a super sharp edge. We're trying to get it to be a little more rounded, like it's a worn out brick and not a brand new sharp crisp brick. So we don't need to have edge loops all the way to the very edge. We're just trying to get a basic shape. So the closer these little edges get to the the segments get to the edge, it'll sharpen that a lot versus rounding it. So by keeping them moderately spaced, it generally holds the shape without giving you sharp, crisp edges. So just extra notes. So let's remove some of those lines. So I'll take those out, and then I don't really need these, so I'll delete those. And you don't need Turbosmooth to put it into zBrush. zBrush will automatically do it for you, so I'm just going to remove the Turbosmooth. But it helped me to make sure it looks right before I put it in zBrush. So Turbosmooth is helpful in that respect. It helps you, but you don't need it to put into zBrush. If you have it though, and it's on there, it won't affect it when it goes into zBrush, so you're fine. So instead of making a brand new brick and trying to make it the same position, I'm just going to grab another one and hold Shift and pull it out sideways so I have a second brick. So it's a copy, it's the exact same one. I don't need to go and draw a new one, but I could if I wanted to. So I'm going to go to Rotate and rotate that somewhere around there maybe. So it's not perfectly a right angle. Then grab this from this bottom where it has the green and the red highlighted, so I can move it in both directions. If I only grab green, I can only move it this way. And it just saves me a step to grab in between and push it all the way until it looks like it's intersecting. So you can see here it's intersecting, so we're going to pull it up because the stone can't physically go through the wooden post, so it's going to pull out to about there. And then I'm going to pull it up maybe about halfway, and then go to the Rotate command again, so move, rotate, and scalar right up here. So using the Rotate command, I'm going to rotate this upwards, maybe about that far, and see what happens. So we're trying to get the bottom to sit on the ground, and this to sit on the top of the other rock, but not actually go through the rock. So we need to go to Move, and over here is Move. And the shortcut for these is W, E, and R. So if I do W, E, R, back to W, you can see it changes those up there. I usually use a lot of shortcuts to save you some time, but you don't need to use shortcuts. You can just click up here if you forget. So I'm going to move the green arrow and slide it over here. And now you can see at the boxes, maybe move it up a little more and then back in a little more. So the box is more or less almost sitting exactly on this one and on the ground at the same time. So it has some overlap. So it looks a little more natural, but it's still intersecting here. So I'm going to slide that out just a little bit. So now it looks more naturally just sitting there and stacked. And then we have the same effect right here. Alright, so we have two boxes down. And let's do a circle right now, or a sphere. We'll go to Sphere, click on that, and then drag this out, about that big or so. And you might notice the colors are not quite the same. The colors don't matter, it's just the generic color it randomly picks for you. We're going to make a whole new texture map, so don't worry about colors. You could match them, but you don't need to. So we're going to go to Scale, and we're going to squish this down just a little bit. And we don't want the rock sitting in the ground, so we're going to slide it up above the grid level, so sitting on the ground. And this way we have the rock pretty close. We can probably move it a little closer, so it's sitting there. So we have the rock, let's move it a little way from there. So we have a rock, we have two stones, and they're all sitting in position now. And so the last thing is to put the sign on there. So I could make a brand new sign, or I could even take one of these and hold Shift and copy it upwards, but I'll make a new sign. So we'll do box. We'll drag out a box somewhere about something like that, let's say. And I don't need all these segments on there. So you can click one by one to go all the way down, or you can just right click and reset everything. But I'm actually going to leave these segments on there. I'm just going to get rid of the ones on the top. So let's move this all the way up against there so it's almost going through it. And then slide it all the way up to here. Now let's try and center it. So I'll put it there. As you can see, we've centered the sign. It looks like it should be probably a little wider, so I'm going to go to Scale and maybe stretch it a little wider. That should work. Maybe a little taller. Okay. And then probably a little thinner because that looks pretty thick. So we're going to squish it in a little bit. Alright, and then lastly, you can see there's a gap. The sign can't float in front of the post, so we're going to slide that until it touches the post. So now it looks like it's up against the post. And lastly, we need to do a rotate. So I'm going to go to Rotate and grab this little, you can see it highlights in yellow whatever color you're on. So the green one, the green arrow, we're going to rotate that just a little bit, maybe about that much. And then slide that down to there. And we have that matching. This one has, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to do 4 by 1, 2, 3, 4 by 4. So if I go back to modify, we can see that there's 5 and 3. So I just set it to 4 and 4 because it matches that one. They're not quite squarish. You could add more if you wanted to. Let's just say, if you keep adding them now, you're going to get more square shape, but it doesn't matter too much as long as you're pretty close. So I'll slide that back down. I'll go 6 this time instead of 4. Alright, so now let's put an edit poly on there. Edit poly. And let's go to the Vertice mode, so now I can move these vertices around. So click Vertice mode. As you can see, it lights up our vertice count. So let me select these. And what I'm doing is I'm dragging across them, and that selects them. If you click one, you have to zoom in and click the other one using Control, and it will add. And so you can see that it added 2 red dots. But if you just drag across both of them, it'll select both at once. So it saves you some time if you use the drag method. And so I know that I want both, so I'm going to basically just drag across to get them both. And slide this inwards, maybe to about there. It looks like this one bumps in a little also. So let's bump that in a little. It looks like this one bumps in this way. And again, to show you, if I only click it once and I move it, you're still going to have the other one back there. So you're not really getting it the way it should be. So drag across both, and now you can pull both at once because it selects both at once. And it looks like this one might be in a little bit up there. So now we should have a pretty similar looking shape. And the only thing left to do on the sign now is that if you notice here, there's edge loops going around the edges. So it means adding more loops. By doing that, it'll keep the right angle. So if I were to go to Turbosmooth right now, it's really going to round these edges a bit. And just to show you, Turbosmooth, you see it really rounds the edges. We don't want it to be that round. We want kind of a right angle block of wood signpost. So let's Control Z that. And we'll go over to Edit, Swift Loop. And the reason Swift Loop is here is because we have an Edit Poly in there. If you don't have an Edit Poly, you won't get the Edit Swift Loop option. So I'm going to click the Swift Loop, and you could put it in multiple different places. You could go around this way and go to all 4 corners, or you could just do how it was in the picture. One right here, as close to the edge as you can get, and one about here. Alright, and right click to cancel. And now when you go over to modifier list, we can put the Turbosmooth back on and you'll see the result. So what it did was it kept a more sharper edge right here. It has a harder edge instead of being so rounded. So it's still, it looks like it rounds in a bit, but otherwise it holds most of the same shape. So we're going to leave it like that. So you can see the final result after ZBrush. We're probably going to pop this side in also, but I'll show you how to do that in case you wanted to modify shapes later when you get to ZBrush. So don't worry about that. If you want to pull this side in also, you could grab the vertices. Let's do that. You can just grab these two, pull it in right now to match, but I'll show you how to do that in ZBrush in case you decide to modify it later. So the last thing for this base shape is that we're going to pull out these little nubs or stumps on the side of the post. So to do that, we got to turn off this one so we can switch objects. If you have these activated, you can't grab another shape. So you just have to turn this selection mode off, and now you can grab another shape, whatever shape you wanted. So we're going to grab the post, and we're going to look at the picture. It looks like it's going to be somewhere on here. So we're going to put an Edit Poly, the modifier list, Edit Poly. And so now we have an Edit Poly, so now we can start grabbing those selections. We're going to grab the Polygon mode. And with that, we can grab, let's say, this one. And if you hold Control, you'll add one. If you hold Alt, you're going to remove one. So I'm going to hold Control and add multiple. If you don't hold either of them, it's just going to pick a new one. So we need Control on these 4. So now we can look at the drawing and see that it matches more or less right where we want it. And then Extrude down here, the Extrude button. With this, we can pull this out. So I'm going to click and hold and drag it with the left mouse button, and you can see that it pulls out. Sometimes it might go in, but we want it to come out. So maybe about that far. So now it looks about right. But let's also go to the Move command, and let's move it up a little bit. So it looks like it's kind of coming up at an angle. And we don't want a square branch. See how it's kind of pointy on the corners? So let's go grab Vertex Mode, or you can actually grab Edge Mode. It might save you some steps. We want this edge, 3 and 4. So we have 4 edges, and with 4 edges, we should be able to scale. So we click on Scale, and we should be able to scale these in. So we're not scaling in the right direction, Control Z. So let's scale in this way. So we pull it down and to the left and right. But it's also not scaling that way. So we need to switch this basically. The Edge Mode doesn't seem to be pulling it in the way we want it to go. So let's switch out to Vertice Mode. Shortcut to that, if you've already selected the edges you want, you can hold Control and click Vertex, and it'll convert your edges into vertices. And with Vertice Mode, we can grab the center and pull it in like that. So by doing that, it more or less rounded all of it. So now it's a rounded nub coming out. Alright, and so the next one looks like it's going to be right up on the top. So let's go back to Polygon Mode, and we're going to grab the ones right up here. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. And it looks about where it's coming out. So again, go down to Extrude down here. We click on this one, and we're going to pull this out, maybe about that far. Then go back to the Move command, move it up a little bit. And this time let's try using Vertice to show you the difference, unless you want to use Edge and convert them to vertices. By this method, I'm going to have to click all 8 vertices manually. So 1, hold Control, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright, so now I have all 8. So instead of clicking all 8, last time I did 4 edges and converted them to 8 vertices, so I saved a couple seconds. This way it was a little bit longer. So let's go to Scale again, and with Scale, I can grab the center and scale them in until it looks a little more rounded like. So that should do that. And there's actually one more nub, but we can't really see it from this angle. If I switch out photos, let's say I click on the back view of this one, there's actually one more sitting right in the back side of the sign, right above that stone. So I'm going to switch back to here and go back to Polygon Mode. And it looks like it's somewhere right about here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. If I switch back out to here, you can see it's actually, that's the front of the sign. Never mind. Looks like it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's more or less sitting right about there. I could probably go another row higher actually. So let's Alt deselect those and Control. So now it's about the yeah, it's about the right height. If you look in relation to this one, to that one, so this one to that one, it could be the angle that it looks a little bit different here, but that should work. This box could actually be a little bit narrower, it looks like. Alright, so we grab that, go to Extrude, and we'll pull this out a little bit. And again, go to move it upwards. And Edge Mode will be a little bit faster. So I'll grab the 4 edges, Control, click on Vertice to switch them to vertices, go to Scale, and scale all of those in so it's a little bit rounded now. And that should work for that. And it looks like this one might actually be a little more squarish. So I'm going to deselect Vertex Mode so I can grab another object and then scale this one in a little bit so it's a little more square shaped, and then move it closer to that signpost again. Alright, and that should more or less finish the base shape. So we're just going to put this in ZBrush now and start creating the high res, which is going to be around 500,000 polygons. So all we did here at Max was create the basic shape just so as a template so we can start working with ZBrush to modify it and put it at high res. The only object that needs these swift loops right here would be the sign. The rest of them don't need swift loops because we're not trying to keep hard edges like we were on the signpost or the sign. We're just trying to get the general shape going. And so we don't need this anymore. You can delete this image if you wanted to, just select and press delete, or you can leave it in the background. And that's it for now. So in part 2, we're going to be jumping to ZBrush. The last thing we need to worry about is exporting. There's 2 ways we can export. One that's really quick and easy, and one that's going to be a little more easier to work with in the long run. So I'll show you both and I'll explain the differences. The easy way, you just drag everything. So you have all the pieces selected. There should be 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll go up here to File and go to Export and Export Selected. We don't want to do Export Regular because it'll spit out the drawing in the background. We just want the Export Selected, the 5 pieces we selected. And we're going to put this in our folder, and we're going to call it an OBJ. OBJ means object, and that's the file type that ZBrush will import as an object file. So we're going to click OBJ and call this one piece demo, so you can see that it's one piece, and press save. And the settings here don't really matter. Sometimes these are already selected. It doesn't matter if they're selected or not. I usually unselect them, but I'll show you the difference of what happens. If you leave them selected and press export, it runs through and it finishes. So we press done, and we go to our folder. And those check marks basically made a material. We don't really need the material. The material is helping trying to identify what textures are assigned to it, but we don't have any textures, so we don't really need a material file. So you can delete it if you want. We don't really need it, so you can press delete and just delete it. Or you can just not make it to begin with. You don't have to delete it, but it's just one extra file you don't really need. So that's a quick and easy way. Let's do a little more long way. So the long way is clicking one piece at a time. This one, go up to Export Selected, and we're going to call this the post, and press save. And this is what happens if you don't select those and just press export and press done. You'll see that it puts it in the folder, but it doesn't make the material, the MTL, which you don't need anyway. So that's the post. Let's export the sign. So every time I do this, I'm exporting the selected, which is just the one, and we're going to call this sign. Press save, export, done. Jump to rock, and let's speed up a little bit. Export selected, rock, save, export, done. And the last one, export selected, stone, front, because it's the one in the front, I guess, but you can name it whatever you want. Save, export, done. Click the last one, file, export, selected, stone, right, because it's off to the right. Save, export, done. Alright, and we've exported pieces, and in part 2 we'll see what exactly that did when we did it separate and together, and that'll be in the ZBrush part. Alright, so that's pretty much all we need for this, and that's the end of part 1.